Oh, good, great. Good to see you. Helen, would you like to come up? Thanks. That's for you. Just pop that up. Yeah. Okay. Well, please take a seat. Well, good morning, everyone. As I mentioned last week, we'd be having a special guest here this week, and we do, Helen Van Wyck, who is a highly regarded Christian counsellor. Yes, make her feel welcome. So thank you so much for coming along this morning, Helen. Giving up your time. Yeah, giving up your time and not worshipping with your own church this morning to be here with us. So we really appreciate you coming along and sharing with us. So this is going to be a good one, guys. So hope you've got your notebooks all ready. You all set? Good. And thanks for coming out in the rain too. Yeah. What a bunch of champions you are. I bet I had a wager this morning with one of the other elders because we bet around here on things. And I said 6 people were going to show up. So I lost. Me of little faith, but there we go. Anyway, not because of Helen, no. Because it's the beginning of the school holidays and it's wet. And we know that the Bible says if it's wet, you don't have to go to church anymore, right? So, at least in some people's readings anyway. Cynicism and sarcasm are gifts of the Spirit. So just... You're in the right place, Helen. You're in the right place. I excel. I strongly exercise my gifts. Well, okay, enough about me. Let's hear about you, Helen. So tell us a little bit about yourself and why you do what you do, maybe your Christian journey and why you do what you do.
Okay. Adrian did send me some of the questions beforehand, so I did have a bit of time to reflect. And as I was thinking about it and looking back, I think I realised that I grew up, I spent the first 30 years of my life in Zimbabwe and South Africa, and just was always a very empathetic and compassionate person and really felt the suffering of others quite keenly. I came to the Lord 18 years ago and started my journey with him, and through that time realised that there was a lot of things about myself that I hadn't understood. I just felt like I wasn't progressing in my journey in ways that I wanted to, and I didn't really understand. And so I leaned into that a little more, and it ended up with me studying counselling. And so I've been counselling for about 12 years now. Started off with individuals, more in the last couple of years with couples as well, and most of my clients are Christians. And I guess I'm just really passionate about seeing people flourish and understand themselves better, and if they are feeling held back in any way, to know why and what to do about that. So, yeah, I'm really passionate about, I guess the thing I love about my job is being able to just walk with somebody through their journey. There can be a lot of feelings involved in that, and that can be scary for people. So to provide a bit of safety and a bit of permission to feel and to do the work, yeah, I love it.
Okay. I think we have a tendency, especially in the Western world, to compartmentalise everything. There is our spiritual life, and then there's our physical well-being, and then, we often don't see the connection between all of these things. But broadly speaking, how do you see the connection between mental health and our own, I guess, discipleship, our own spiritual formation? Is there a connection? How do you see that?
I definitely think so. I mean, I think we're spirit, soul and body, and that's never felt more than when you're physically unwell. You just think how hard it is to get motivated or feel happy about anything. So I guess for me as a counsellor, I see my work in the realm of the soul, which is our mind, our will and our emotions. And I think if we're having difficulty navigating that, it can most definitely have a significant impact on how we relate to others, on how we relate to God. So definitely I do think that our mental health has a significant role in our spiritual formation and in moving forward in all the things that God has for us.
Yeah. In pre-COVID, because it was a time where we didn't have COVID, does anyone remember those times? In pre-COVID times, were there some major themes that came up in your counselling?
I've thought about this question. Excuse me. Thanks. And probably yes and no. I think I said to somebody once that probably 95% of the counselling that I do is relationship counselling. And by that I mean that often the place where our difficulty shows up is in our closest relationships. And so that was a theme beforehand. I mean, things like anxiety and depression are consistent and constant. But yeah, just people struggling to manage themselves in a way that they feel happy with, that they feel like they can connect with others.
Yeah. Okay. So what are some of the results, or I guess benefits, that you observe in the lives of people who actually do this kind of work, who undertake counselling?
Okay. I think resilience is definitely one. I feel like people come into counselling expecting that healing is a linear process. I'm going to start here, I'm going to finish here, and then I'll be good. But really it's more cyclical. And so we tend to go round and around. Plus, it's easy to think if I've been struggling that I'm going to come in, I'm going to do my journey, and then I won't struggle anymore. But suffering is part of life. And so we're always going to hit places where we struggle. But I think people who have done a journey and understand themselves well they just know how to navigate it better. You know, they know how to manage their thinking and what to do about their feelings, how to stay connected, what they need in terms of relationships, community, looking after themselves, etc. So I feel like they're more equipped to cope with things moving forward.
Yeah, and there's a tendency sometimes for us to think that kind of capacity is a function of age. You know what I mean? Like, as you get older, you know how to do better, right? But that's not necessarily true, is it? I mean, it's more of a case of being taught, given the tools, and learning how to do these type of things. Yeah, it's not something we necessarily instinctively do.
No, I think I'm probably jumping ahead here, but when we're coming out of something like COVID, we've all experienced stuff in the last 2 years that we never thought we would in our lifetime. We've seen things and heard things and lived through lockdowns and different things, and I forget where I was going with this.
It's not a function of age, it's something...
Oh, yes. And so when you find yourself in a place where you're feeling feelings that are not familiar to you, that can be scary. And I think, a lot of my clients that I see are sort of, because I only work with adults, are like 18 to 25s, where people are trying to figure out their lives. But more and more I'm getting people coming to counselling for the first time in their 50s or 60s, because they're recognising that there is more that they need to know and understand, and things that are impacting them. And I think as more and more people are talking about mental health, we're becoming more aware. But it's definitely a growth journey rather than a maturing by age.
Yeah, and I think that's the gift of age. You actually start to realise how much you don't understand. When you're young, you think you know everything, and you don't. And then life beats it out of you and you realise, I need help. And it's never too late, is it, Helen?
Absolutely
it's
not.
It's never too late.
No, absolutely not.
Well, we will be getting into that a little bit in terms of sometimes we're impacted by things we don't know what it is, and yet it's manifesting itself in some way. So we'll get into that. So onto the COVID thing, right? We've been through a pandemic. It's been a really... I thought there was a plane taking off. Okay, but we're not near an airport, so okay. Okay, good. Anyway, it's been a couple of years, and it's impacted pretty much all of us, even if we don't necessarily realise that. And I see it in church dynamics and the way things have shifted. We were told there would be these kind of psychological, social consequences. I'm really interested in hearing from you what you've discovered or observed in your experience thus far, because I realise a lot of the data kind of is just starting to come in now, so it's still very early days. But in just anecdotally, I guess, even, well, maybe you found some studies, I don't know, but even anecdotally, what are you noticing?
I guess I'm noticing a lot of people are coming to see me almost in a state of crisis because they've tried to navigate what's happening for them, and reintegrating into jobs and school and life and public transport and lots of different things, and not able to do it in the way they did it pre-COVID. And so they can almost build themselves up to almost a sense of panic by the time they come to see me. More so because they don't understand why they can't just go back to normal. And I understand that most of us understand that normal is different now than what it was pre-COVID. But I think some people have an expectation that we're just sort of going to pick up where we left off. But a lot has changed for us in the last couple of years.
Yeah, it really has. And I think we're probably not even clear exactly how that shifted yet either. You know, like what's changed. So how does that typically, you know, again, a lot of us aren't very self-aware. You know, we're not necessarily we can't necessarily articulate what's wrong, but something that is wrong with us, it's going to manifest in some way. What sort of ways and not any particular issue, but what sort of ways does our body, you know, all sorts of things start to tell us something's not right?
Okay, well, one of the things, I sent you a slide that might be helpful just to pop up, because I think over the last 2 years, I work with clients that I work with on an ongoing basis, but have also done a lot of sessions with people that are just one or two. And really in terms of stabilizing how they feel, this kind of thing, I don't know if you can see it very well, but where the green arrows are is this idea of a window of tolerance. And so when life happens to us within our window, we cope. We have developed means of dealing with what's happening for us. We can feel our feelings, we can name them, we know what to do about them, we can communicate well, we can problem solve and strategize, we can use our experience and our reasoning and understanding skills. But when stuff happens like COVID, that has been described as a global trauma, and it's gone on for a significant period of time, our world has changed. There has been grief and loss and sadness and fear and all kinds of things. We've been impacted on every level. It's reasonable that for most of us, we can be pushed outside of our ability to cope well. And so we'd either go up to the top section, which we call hyperarousal, where we might feel anxious, possibly angry, we feel emotionally overwhelmed, sometimes a little out of control. And there's like adrenaline and cortisol that happens in that place. So it's not just I'm a thought, like we feel it in our body. And some people will automatically do that, and other people will go down to the bottom, where is hypoarousal, which is where it does feel overwhelming, and so we just shut down and disconnect. And so that might look like lethargic or unmotivated or not wanting to connect with other people, isolating. It's almost like a sense of, I'm just disinterested. And for some of us, we would go up into hyperarousal, which is very exhausting because of the hormones and stuff, and then we would drop down the bottom. And that's a difficult place to be, because although we don't feel fear, we also don't feel joy or connection or love or warmth. And so a lot of people will move up the top and then down the bottom and then up the top. And so people are coming to me and saying, I just feel like I'm either really anxious or I just don't care. And so it's that kind of thing that people are noticing, that it's just not their normal. And they're not really sure why it's happening or how it's happening. But essentially, hyperarousal is a fight or flight response. So that might look like, I need to leave my job, or I got to get out of this house, like I can't stick around. And down the bottom, like I said, is just that disinterest, feeling tired, unmotivated, that kind of thing.
Yeah, we did notice that there was, as COVID was kind of tapering off, a lot of people were making some very big lifetime decisions, almost reactively, in my opinion. You know, it was like, I've decided this is what I want out of life. I think, and I don't know whether this was wise, but Heather and I talked about it, and I said, now's not the time to be making any big decisions about anything, because it might seem to stack up rationally, but I don't actually think it's coming from a very good place. Would that be a fair assessment? I know that's generalising, because you might be talking to someone who's perfectly mentally healthy and weighed it all up, but so that's the type of reaction, people selling up in Sydney and going to live in the country. That was a big one. Yeah. The Great Resignation.
Look, I think for some people they've had time and opportunity to reprioritise and figured out things that are more important to them. But yes, some people are unable to pinpoint what's wrong. And so they're narrowing it down to where I live or where I work or whatever, rather than understanding that if you're in a pattern like anything like what's happening up there, it's because the last 2 years have been abnormal. It's not necessarily because there's something wrong with you or with your life, but we're all trying to adapt again as we're coming out of COVID and living in a world like that it looks like now. So it's really more understanding that we've been impacted by this external thing that's not normal, and that there's not necessarily anything wrong with you. You're just responding to what we've endured for the last 2 years.
Yeah, thank you. Were there any upticks during COVID in any particular issues that you noticed?
I think predominantly grief and anxiety. Anxiety probably because, again, people haven't known what's happening for them. Plus, there's been a lot of big political and societal issues over the last couple of years. And there's also been a lot of divisiveness, a lot of fear, a lot of anger. The world has looked at some points like a very dark place. There's been conspiracy theories out there and people haven't known what to believe. And everyone's been isolated. And so, anxiety, I think, is a natural response to a lot of that. But the grief as well, because a lot of people just equate grief with something that happens when you lose someone you love. But grief is a response to loss of any kind, and they can be big losses, like losing someone special, or losing a job, or losing an income, or even things like not being able to have weddings and funerals and stuff like that, but all the way down to small things like I can't turn up at Woolies and anticipate that I'll be able to buy whatever I want, even now. Do you know what I mean? So there's been these collective and multiple losses over time, plus because we've been dealing with a lot of uncertainty, we've been in a bit of a survival space, so yeah, I'd say predominantly it would be grief and anxiety.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm getting off topic here, but grief isn't just one thing, is it? I remember Heather coming home showing me a printout you'd given her, the ball of grief, and going, oh, that makes so much sense. That makes so much sense. Do you want to just explain the ball of grief?
Well, I guess grief is, most of us know grief as sadness, perhaps a sense of hopelessness, but it can be very active as well. So there can be a lot of feelings like anger or rage or disinterest. We can feel abandoned by a loss. We can feel abandoned by God. So it can be a very anxious and stressful place. It's not necessarily that I'm just sitting and feeling sad about life. It is at times it's very, much like the window of tolerance, at times we're numbing out to try and cope. But then other times there is a lot of emotion and a lot of anger and stress and lots of different things. And it's often that brings people in. And then when they understand that they're actually grieving, you can almost see them go, okay, I'm not crazy. Yeah.
Absolutely, it had that effect on me, that's for sure. What about now as we begin to taper out? Well, I'd like to say we're tapering out of COVID, but apparently we're into a new wave. This thing doesn't seem to want to go away. But let's theoretically say we're tapering out. Even if COVID's not finished with us, it appears we're finished with COVID and we're all starting to move on, right? That's certainly how it appears to be from where I'm talking. Everyone I bump into is like, whatever, right? We're done. We've left that in the past now, and COVID's like, no, I'm still, and we're like, don't care, right? So as we taper out of this, and we're tapering out of it, what are you discovering, seeing? What are some of the issues that are now beginning to come up?
Well, I think even though we're not out of it, we have a better understanding of what we're dealing with. Like a couple of months ago, one of my daughters got COVID, and she got quite panicky when she got really sick. And it's because initially we didn't know what it would mean if we got COVID or if people we loved got COVID. So our brain is very sensitive to the danger messages, and that can still be true. But I think most of us have sort of moved a little bit out of the survival mode, or we're moving out of, and so we're feeling feelings and we're reconnecting and we're doing those sorts of things. And so we've actually got more capacity to deal with emotions that we might not have been able to deal with in the last 2 years. And so people are like, there is this heightened emotion, and I don't understand why I feel this way or why this is happening for me. So I think that little bit of safety or understanding means that we now have capacity. You know, even as like, yeah, we're feeling the impacts of what happened over the last 2 years.
Yeah, okay. So we're all Christians, obviously, we're in church. So not that the two necessarily go together, but here we are. Here we are. Do any of these take on or attach to kind of spiritual faith issues in your experience? If so, how? Like, which ones and how?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of times the way that we engage with our faith is based on how we view ourselves, how we view other people, how we view God, how we view our community. And little things like people having to get back on trains and buses or drive cars long distances, like that has taken a lot more energy for people, as has being gathered together. Like, I know for myself as an introvert, it's never been an easy thing to go to a big social space, but it takes more energy now. When you've done church for 2 years on the lounge with your dressing gown and your socks and eating croissants and coffee, like, it's difficult to get up and leave and go out in the rain and stuff like that. And, you know, I think, yeah, I'm not sure if that's answering your question. I feel like I've lost my train of thought. So if you've got another question, that'd be good.
It was how it's sort of latching onto faith issues. I mean, you know, in your experience, you know, is this causing people to question, like, where is God in all of this, and what has it done to people's faith? You know, whereas before we were kind of tinkering along, yeah, you had your speed humps and your pitfalls and whatever, but this threw a lot of us quite significantly. You know, some of us didn't have many circumstantial things go wrong, but some people did. So have you noticed some people going, I guess my bubble was burst about how I thought about God and the way I thought things were going to work? Has that shifted for some people?
Yes, I think so. I think in the beginning of COVID, I remember watching people doing these collective videos online, and everyone was praying, and there was just all this beautiful sense of us coming together. But as we've moved through the 2 years, I think people are feeling more separated from each other, perhaps from God. It is confusing, the world that we're living in. You know, when we're praying, and we can feel like, where is God in this? Yeah. And church looks different too for us, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you were mentioning, you know, the disconnection. That's not just from each other. That can actually be from God too, can't it? Like,
Yes.
we can really experience that disconnection from God.
Yeah. Look, I think a lot of us struggle to feel feelings and be connected to God. Sometimes we feel, like a lot of us are happy to bring, or okay to bring sadness to God, but if I'm feeling angry or abandoned or frightened, we can feel like that disqualifies us from His presence. Like, our feelings are our feelings. They're a response to the world around us, to our own internal lenses and things, but they're not who we are. And so a lot of people, because they're struggling with emotions and feelings and ways of thinking, and perhaps there's more hopelessness or helplessness or struggling to believe things, that they're disconnecting from God rather than moving toward Him for comfort in suffering.
Yeah, it's been very interesting to observe that from a pastor's point of view, and personally as well. So what are the potential pitfalls, I mean, generally, spiritually, of not actually being a little more proactive in addressing these issues as they come up?
Well, like I said, I think people try to navigate the journey, and over time, if they can't, they can end up in a worse place. You know, I think, I mean, as a counsellor, I think help-seeking behaviour is always a good thing, and it doesn't mean you have to see a professional, but talk to somebody. You know, connect with people, talk to people. It's a lot to navigate, you know.
It is a lot to navigate, isn't it? Do you think there is a sense in which some of us are reluctant to admit that as well? That this has, like, because I guess maybe we look at the journey we've had and we didn't lose our job, we've still got a roof over our head, no one got terribly sick. You know, there was no obvious really bad thing that happened to us. Yeah. And so we kind of say to ourselves, well, why am I feeling a bit beat up? Nothing really happened to me. So do you think there's a sense that we can do that?
Definitely. I think we're all very good at the shoulds and shouldn'ts, and I hear this a lot. I should feel different. Yeah. I definitely shouldn't feel this way. I should be grateful. I should be happy. But all of us have a subjective experience of things, and even if I'm safe in my home, it doesn't mean I'm not impacted by what I'm seeing happening in other parts of the world. We've been inundated on social media with images and difficulties and traumas, and definitely.
You're right, it's been more than COVID. It's almost been like a bit of a perfect storm of big issues that have really, taken its toll on us. So thinking about a way forward from here, broadly speaking, what would you say, what advice would you give to a group of people who are moving out of a pandemic? Whether the pandemic's finished with us or not is not the point, but we're moving out of the pandemic. What sort of advice would you give to us?
I think connection with others is important on any level, because it's easier to believe bad things about yourself and feel bigger feelings if you're alone with that. I think it's also important, like, I always encourage people to be curious. If I feel a feeling and I notice it, well, why am I feeling this way? But often what we do is we feel a feeling and then we judge how we feel, and then we feel worse. Yeah. So it's often like, if I feel angry, okay, well, I've been watching a lot of injustice on TV and I feel stirred up about that, and maybe that's why I feel angry, and like, that can be one thing. But if I feel a feeling and then I go, well, I shouldn't feel angry about, like, why do I feel angry? Anger is bad, and now I feel guilty, and then I feel shame, and so we kind of make things harder. So curiosity is good, but also compassion. Like, a lot of us have compassion for others, but we fail to have compassion for ourselves. Yeah. And whatever level it's looked like for you, all of us have endured some level of suffering over the last 2 years, and it's significant to you. So, you know, being able to turn toward ourselves with compassion and go, it's okay that I feel this way, it's okay that this is hard. Like, I think that kind of thing keeps us connected with ourselves, with God, and with others a lot better than if we move into condemning ourselves.
Yeah, I think there is, I mean, I know personally there's a tendency to either minimise or relativise the thing I've been through, you know, and go, well, it's not as bad as what they've been through, so why am I feeling like this? So you're saying, look, we actually just need to go easy on ourselves. We need to understand we've been through a thing. Whether we think it's been a really bad thing or not, we've been impacted by this.
Yes. I often joke with people and say, if there was a way to navigate something like this without difficult feelings, I would have found it by now, because I've been committed. But really it is like, our feelings, like I said, they connect us with ourselves, with others. They give us information about things, and a lot of us just want to get to the other side. Yes. So we start putting pressure on ourselves to not feel sad or not feel scared or not whatever, and it just exacerbates things.
Yeah, well, that raises an issue then. So this is a long game. There's no quick fix. Like, no one's got anything packaged that we can just go away and buy and sort ourselves out, and no courses we can sign up and
like I said,
magic
I feel like
it
if
away.
there was, I would have found it by now.
Yeah. And it's important for us to understand that, isn't it? It's important for us to understand this is going to be a long game that we're going to have to play here to do this. So resilience becomes quite an issue for us in that respect, doesn't it? Is there anything we can do to build our resilience? This was an off-the-cuff question, so sorry about that.
No, like I said, I think it's a lot of the things that we've been talking about. Like, I feel like if I learn to work with myself rather than how to tell myself what to do or how to do it, I'm going to feel more grounded. I'm going to more easily stay within my window of tolerance. If I'm more compassionate with myself, I'm going to be more compassionate with others. Being able to feel emotion, like if we selectively numb our feelings, like if we numb fear and sadness and anger, we also numb joy and delight and love and all those beautiful things. And so it's to be able to navigate the breadth of who we are in a way that we're kind to ourselves, we're connected to others, we're connected to God. So it's then more about how we travel through the difficulty rather than how we get to the other side.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, if I'm running a marathon and I'm sprinting to the finish line, like, it's going to be tough.
Yes, it's going to be tough for me anyway in a marathon. So, but no, that's really helpful. Thank you. So, are there any sort of spiritual practices that you think would be particularly beneficial for us at this time?
I think about the ways that you connect to God. I think quiet is a really good place to start, whatever that looks like for you. We can get into habits, and I think a lot of us have done that over lockdown, of being constantly busy and constantly engaged and constantly taking in information. So to slow things down, spend time on purpose in quiet. I mean, prayer, gathering together. We experience, I know for myself, like, it took me a little while in the beginning of COVID to recognize how much I missed corporate worship and how much business me and God did in that time during worship, where I don't stand in my lounge room and abandon myself to singing when my family's there. Maybe some people do, but that's not me. So I think it is about knowing how you connect with God, and allowing space for that.
Because it is quite an individual, unique thing, isn't it? It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of approach, but the important things would be slowing down. Would also, like, avoiding certain things be helpful too? You know, like you said, we've been on a bit of a diet of bad news. Some of us are kind of addicted to watching that. I don't need you to say no, but it's bad, isn't it? Yes. I mean, it's...
Yes,
What would you say to someone, I don't know, not like me, of course, that can't stop watching bad news?
Yeah.
Turn it off?
Yes. Look, I think so. I mean, essentially...
There's the price of admission
what's
right there.
What's the benefit in it? You know, a lot of the stuff
it feeds my anxiety.
I think it's good to know what's happening in the world, of course. But at the same time, a lot of this stuff triggers really hard feelings. And if we're not talking about it and we're not able to process it in any way, we can be really stuck. I think a good measure sometimes is if you get to the end of a day and you feel really low, what have you been engaging with on social media? What have you been talking about and thinking about? how have you been thinking about the world that we live in? And, you know, like if you look at, like if they talk about compassion fatigue, when we have that kind of thing, we forget that there is good in the world because we're so focused on the negative and the fear aspects and just all the stuff that's attached to that we forget that there is also love and beauty and kindness, you know, and yeah.
It's the Philippians 4:8 thing, isn't it? Whatever is noble, whatever is excellent, whatever is praiseworthy. It behoves us to actually discipline ourselves to take time to do that because there are those things still in the world. They are. They're in our world. They're immediately present. They're present all over the place. But we kind of lose the ability to see that sometimes, don't we? Because we become a little bit myopic with the bad stuff. So, yeah, that's, take note of that, Adrian. Watch good stuff. Okay. So, Helen, is there anything you'd like to add that hasn't been addressed this morning that you'd like, you know, a wisdom bomb you'd like to drop on us this morning about how we can, no pressure, how we can go forward from here?
Maybe on a personal level, I think it's such a good thing to reconnect with love. We've been so caught up in fear and uncertainty to remember that God loves us. You know, that we're worthy of love. He sees us as worthy of love. That I can have compassion for myself, care for myself, be kind to myself, be kind to others, look for the good in the world. Like, yeah, I just think like there is peace in that. You know, there's a lot ahead, like you said. We don't know when this is going to end or how. And so to be filling yourself with love and good things and surround yourself with things and people that put something in and be mindful of that. Sometimes, you know, there are places that drain us and things that drain us and even TV shows and different things. Like, think about how you feel at the end of a day. What's filled you up and what's emptied you out, and put more good stuff in.
Yeah, I also think of being that for others too. I mean, Jesus said it's more blessed to give than it is to receive. And there's a sense in which even though sometimes we're not feeling it, it is a good thing for us to kind of pour ourselves out for someone else because that comes back. You know, I mean, I think that you're looking at me skeptically there, like, yeah. You know, there's a sense, not being silly, not putting, you know, not overextending ourselves, but where we can actually encourage someone else, where we can serve someone else, where we can just try and get alongside someone else. That comes back on us, doesn't it?
Yes, I think, you know, if you think about values, we all have values, and values can be the things that help you do the things you don't feel like doing. I don't always feel like pushing the trolley back to put it whatever, but I do it. And then you feel better about the things that you do that are consistent and congruent with your values. So if I'm doing something that I know is in line with my values, I feel better too. And it is an uplifting way. And sometimes there's not a lot we can do about what's happening in our world. So to think a bit bigger than what's happening for just me, I may not feel like I have energy for it, but at the end of the day, I'm going to go to bed feeling better than if I just hung around feeling bad.
No, that's a great point to end on. Well, look, thank you so much, Helen, for coming along. That's been excellent to hear all of that. Thanks, Helen.
Thanks, Adrian.
Hopefully you found that helpful. And look, we're just mindful that we didn't want to just open this up and then leave it. If people need to talk to anyone today, please come and see us. And we've got Carolyn sitting out the back, who is also a counsellor. She's happy to talk to people today. And we also have plenty of people we can refer people. If you're thinking, I wouldn't mind seeing someone and talking about some stuff, we've got people we can refer you to as well. So just be aware, don't walk out of here if you feel like there's something that's come up that you feel to take this further. We have things that we can help you with in that.